The chamber smelled of ozone and something faintly sweet, the biological signature of the Vorith, a species that communicated as much through chemical signals as spoken word. Dr. Ethan Cross had read about it in briefings. He hadn't expected it to smell like overripe mango. He stood at the center of the Galactic Union's medical assessment hall, a room designed to make its subjects feel small. It succeeded. The ceiling arched 300 feet overhead, lit by bioluminescent panels that pulsed in rhythms the Vorith found calming. Ethan found them slightly nauseating, but he'd felt nauseating things before and survived. That, as it turned out, was the entire point of today. Across the vast table, a slab of polished Vithian crystal, sat High Counselor Zareth, Scientific Director of the Galactic Union's Biological Classification Committee. Zareth was tall in the way that made tall seem like an insult to the concept. 8 limbs. 4 dedicated to locomotion, 4 to manipulation. A cranial structure that housed not 1 but 3 neural clusters. The Vorith had evolved on a high-gravity world where redundancy wasn't a luxury, it was survival. Zareth was looking at Ethan the way one looks at a cracked vase that somehow still holds water. Dr. Cross, Zareth began, his vocal translator rendering the chemical-acoustic hybrid language into flat English. You understand why you are here. I understand what I was told, Ethan said, folding his hands on the table. I'd like to hear it directly. A ripple moved through the 3 other Vorith delegates seated behind Zareth. Something between amusement and unease. Zareth set a data crystal on the table. It projected a holographic document, the Galactic Union's Biological Threat and Vulnerability Assessment for Newly Contacted Species. Humanity's file was open. Your species, Zareth said, has been reviewed under the Union's Sentient Species Integration Protocol. To qualify for full membership and interstellar travel rights, a species must demonstrate sufficient biological resilience. The committee has reviewed your physiological data. We have concerns. Ethan glanced at the document. He'd seen parts of it, leaked through back channels by a sympathetic Keth diplomat. He already knew what it said. Humans, according to the Galactic Union's finest scientific minds, were a disaster. 70% water. Bones made of calcium, a material the Vorith used in low-grade building insulation. No redundant organs. A single heart. A nervous system so exposed that a precise strike to the back of the neck could end consciousness permanently. Skin that burned under moderate ultraviolet radiation. A core temperature maintenance system so fragile it could be overwhelmed by a difference of 15 degrees in either direction. An immune system that occasionally attacked itself. And the brain, one brain. One. Sitting inside a skull that shattered under roughly the same pressure as a Vorith infant's grip. The committee's conclusion, Zareth said, is that Homo sapiens are among the most biologically vulnerable sentient species ever documented. We have classified your kind as Tier 7, extreme fragility. The lowest tier in Union history. Silence. Ethan Cross looked at the hologram. He looked at Zareth. Then, slowly, he reached into his bag and placed his own data crystal on the table. May I respond? Zareth tilted his cranial array, the Vorith equivalent of a nod. Ethan activated his crystal. A different hologram bloomed above the table, not bureaucratic forms, but biological imagery. Dense, layered, annotated. High Counselor, Ethan said, I'm a xenobiologist. I've spent my career studying how life adapts. I'd like to offer a re-examination of your data, not because it's wrong, but because it's incomplete. He pulled up the first image, a cross-section of human bone. You noted our skeletal structure is calcium-based and fragile. That's partially true. But you assessed dry, isolated bone. What you didn't account for is what bone does under stress. Human cortical bone has a tensile strength of approximately 170 megapascals. More importantly, it is self-repairing. Break a human femur and, given sufficient time, the body will rebuild it, often stronger than before, with increased mineral density at the fracture site. We call it Wolff's Law. Damage us, and we structurally improve. One of the delegates leaned forward. Zareth's secondary eyes, the pair dedicated to fine detail, focused on the hologram. Ethan moved to the next image, a cellular diagram. You flagged our immune system as a liability, specifically, autoimmune conditions. You're not wrong that it misfires. But you misidentified the cost-benefit architecture. Human immune systems are aggressive by design. They attack ambiguous signals because, over evolutionary history, the cost of under-responding to infection was extinction. Autoimmune conditions are a side effect of a system calibrated for maximum threat response. That same system, when a human is exposed to a novel pathogen, can generate targeted antibodies within days. We have humans alive today who carry antibodies for over 200 distinct pathogens, active biological memory banks, walking around, fully functional. He paused, letting the translator catch up. You noted our single heart as a critical vulnerability. The Vorith have 3. The Keth have 2. By redundancy logic, we should fail at the first cardiac event. He switched to a new image, a survival statistics table. And yet, human cardiac muscle, when a coronary event occurs, triggers immediate collateral vessel development. The heart, when partially damaged, reroutes blood supply within hours. We have documented cases of humans surviving events that destroyed 40% of cardiac tissue and returning to full function within months. Not because we have backup hearts. Because our single heart refuses to stop. Zareth said nothing. But his chemical output had shifted. Ethan's sensors read it as the Vorith equivalent of elevated attention. He pressed on. You described our temperature regulation as fragile. 15 degrees of tolerance, you said. Technically accurate in terms of core temperature. But you didn't examine the mechanism. Humans are one of the only species on Earth, and, as far as I know, in the documented galaxy, that can regulate body temperature through active perspiration across the entire skin surface simultaneously. We shed heat faster than almost any animal our size. What this means in practice is that a human being can outrun nearly any other creature on our planet over long distances in hot environments. Not because we are fast. Because everything else overheats and stops. We are persistence hunters. We were built to wear down prey that could individually outpace us, simply by not stopping. He let that land. You classified us as fragile because you were looking for armored shells. Redundant organs. Reinforced skeletons. Toxic skin. You were looking for species that evolved to withstand damage. Ethan leaned forward slightly. We evolved differently. We evolved to survive damage. To absorb it, adapt to it, and continue. The human body does not avoid catastrophic failure through rigidity. It avoids catastrophic failure through flexibility, repair, and stubbornness. He brought up the final image. It was not a diagram. It was a photograph, a human man, standing on a prosthetic leg, having completed a marathon. Below it, another image, a woman 3 weeks post-surgery from a tumor removal, teaching a class. Below that, a child, born prematurely at 26 weeks, what doctors had once called non-viable, sitting up, laughing, alive. High Counselor, Ethan said quietly, your committee looked at our biology and saw what breaks us. I'm asking you to look again. Look at what we do after we break. The chamber was very still. Zareth studied the final photograph for a long moment. His manipulator limbs had stilled, something the briefing documents said indicated deep processing in the Vorith. Your kind, Zareth said at last, has a phrase. I encountered it in linguistic files during our preparation. What does not kill me makes me stronger. We classified it as motivational hyperbole. It's a biological description, Ethan said. Another long silence. Then Zareth reached forward and closed the union's assessment document. I will reconvene the committee, he said. The classification will be reviewed. Ethan began packing his data crystal. One further question, Zareth added. His tone had shifted, less formal. Something that the translator rendered haltingly as curiosity. Your species has been suffering wars, plagues, environmental collapse, and internal conflict for the entirety of your recorded history. And yet your population has only grown. Your technological development has only accelerated. Your reach has only expanded. Yes, Ethan said. Is that not exhausting? Ethan Cross picked up his bag, pushed back his chair, and smiled, the particular smile of someone who has been asked a question that has a very long answer, and has chosen the short one instead. Extremely, he said. We do it anyway. He walked out of the chamber. Behind him, High Counselor Zareth sat for a long moment in the pulsing bioluminescent light, processing the chemical acoustic residue of the conversation. Then he picked up his stylus and, on the assessment form, crossed out Tier 7, Extreme Fragility. He wrote 2 words instead. Further study.